The cover page of One Piece chapter 1133, titled Praise, features the 20th installment in Yamato's pilgrimage. Holden attacked Speed and captured Tama. It's up to Yamato to defeat him. This is actually the second time he's captured Tama, so he probably wants to use her Devil Fruit ability once again. Last time, Luffy was the one to take him down, and with how strong Yamato's supposed to be, he should be a total pushover. We kick things off with a twisted account of the past. 22 years ago, Spandam's father Spandine told a room full of reporters just how chilling the tragedy of Ohara's destruction was. The ship that was meant to evacuate civilians suddenly met a fiery end. He spoke of how their terrible screams were something he'll never forget. And according to him, that and the sinking of several warships were all the handiwork of Nico Robin. We of course know better, but he described her as being a devil pretending to be an 8-year-old child. This man deserves nothing but suffering. According to an SBS, he's come down with an unknown illness that has severely weakened his power within the government. And for me, this is one of those cases where I really don't like SBS because that's something I totally prefer to see instead. The government concluded that the world must never know the full details of what happened on Ohara, lest the brutality of such an incident traumatize children around the world. A false sentiment tinged with a sick sort of irony. Civilians were told to report any sightings of the Devil Child and not to approach her. The people were disturbed to know that she'd come to their island. An old witch claimed to have seen Robin and her cold, murderous eyes. Robin wore rags and survived by rummaging through and eating trash. She was described as being highly intelligent and empathetically mute. Once a bounty of 79 million berries was placed on her head, many ne'er-do-wells decided to hunt Robin too. The fact that she was just a child did not sway them at all. Robin had no shelter to protect herself from the elements. They spoke of her mysterious powers and the necessity of her capture. Mothers struggled to sleep, knowing that such a monster was roaming around unchecked. Grown men prayed for her demise. Robin could only hide from the droves of people who sought to kill her. They called her an enemy of the world. At times, Robin thought about ending things herself, but then she remembered her mother's desperate plea for her survival. Somehow, she mustered the strength to do so. She remembered what Saul told her at the end, that although she's alone, one day she will definitely find true friends. As she abandoned her dark contemplation, Robin admitted to being too afraid of others to ever make any friends. Elsewhere, she read an atlas and found that her home was now missing. She was apprehended when they found her drawing it back in. Robin tried her best to remember what Saul taught her about laughter. It was said that a trail of theft and murder always followed her. Many such terrible rumors were spread about her. To make it through, Robin forced herself to laugh despite the pain and persevere. We're then brought to the present day on Elbaf. The Straw Hats were confused by the existence of a port within a tree and a sea on clouds. Their rainbow sailing has concluded. Now they've made it to the western village port, which has many sea clouds. And plenty of giants were there to greet the returning captains. They were a bit worried since it took so long for them to come back. And it's hard to blame them since these guys suddenly went missing for 100 years over an argument, one that they've still yet to completely settle. The sights were quite a task for the Straw Hats to process. Bonnie, Lilith, and Frankie were overjoyed. Brogy mentioned that the others had made it too. Luffy and Usopp were in the midst of their celebration as they approached. Bonnie and Frankie's eyes shone at the same time. Robin wanted to know more about what they were seeing. Gerd and Goldberg were bringing the rest of the crew and their ship over with a schwarge. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but I don't speak Icelandic or Old Norse, so forgive me. It's a type of rowboat that moves by using island clouds. Lilith finally chimed in with a scientific explanation. The climate on Elbaf is perfect for facilitating such things. Island clouds, sea clouds, Sabao bubbles, rainbow drawing, and hovers can all coexist here. Harudin called out to Luffy and good old Usoland and welcomed them to Elbaf. Nami was delighted to see Robin's haircut, and based on Nami's new look, Robin mentioned how acclimated the navigator seems to be. Luffy was happy to see the giant captain after so long. After Road was strung up, Harudin let Luffy know that he's been following his progress. He's very impressed by the man's rise to now being an emperor. He promised to introduce everyone else later, but firstly informed him that the 4 of them are the new giant warrior pirates, his subordinates. Road just barely managed to croak that there are actually 5 of them, but nobody paid attention to him. Gerd was pleased to make their acquaintances, and although the other half of the crew is greeting her, Sanji never left her grasp. Luffy reminded the guy that he doesn't want subordinates. The giant prince laughed and told him that it's their choice to serve. He happily added that even for an isolated nation like theirs, they were all really excited when they heard that Big Mom was beaten in Wano. Gerd admitted that she and Lin Lin were once friends, but she did something unforgivable to the people of Elbaf. So the Straw Hats may end up learning more about Big Mom's history. More perspectives on what happened to her could be very cool. Their conversation was interrupted by an excited crowd who told the prince to save all the talk for after the toast. Food and drinks should always be the priority. Luffy was more than happy to oblige, and even Usopp felt the same way since he's burned so much energy on account of his excitement. But before they could all head off, Robin caught Luffy's attention. Soon, they were all traveling to the southwest part of the village instead. Robin told them that she doesn't mind going alone, but Luffy refused. Chopper and Nami both wanted to come along too. Jinbei claimed that it's a good excuse to sightsee, and Zoro agreed. Gerd told them that Saul did say that he wanted to show Robin the library, so they're headed down to the school. Robin thanked the giant for guiding them. Apparently, it's not too far away. Luffy shouted that as captain, he has a responsibility to properly greet someone who took care of one of his crewmates. Robin laughed and asked where he heard that. He yelled that it's just the right thing to do. Brogy accepted the side quest the Straw Hats decided to take on, and would save a toast for them after they brought back Saul, which is to say that they'll be drinking in their absence. Meanwhile, Harudin would be preparing the moose they hunted for them. Usopp was amazed to know that even the warriors of Elbaf are scholarly. Gerd told him that Saul is mostly a teacher of history, but he also teaches them about many books. They were taken to Warrior Springs, and the Owl Library was by the water. To the Straw Hats, the springs looks more like a beach, and this beach is made from broken parts of the tree. It doesn't have a tide of its own, but the waterfall from above creates waves. Therefore, it is very much like a sea. Luffy prepared to rush off and grab Saul, but Nami angrily grabbed his face. After all, this is Robin's reunion. Robin took a breath to calm her pounding heart. That's when a giant came racing over. She shouted that Saul has fallen and can't get up. This caused an uproar amongst the pirates. Luffy couldn't believe that he'd picked now to fall down. Sanji felt the same way. Chopper insisted that as a doctor, he'll examine the giant immediately, and Usopp was willing to bet everything on Chopper's assessment. The giant pointed to Saul, who was by the water. Robin noticed him. She began laughing at his silliness and was told not to mock the sick. Robin smiled and told them that she'll go see him on her own. The Straw Hats were concerned, but let her go. Robin laughed at how worked up she got. She approached him while stepping through the sand. Saul looked up slightly, and Robin just smiled. Then he roared up at her. He laughed and asked if he got her. This entire sequence is a homage to the first time they met. And just like back then, Robin isn't afraid in the slightest. Saul realized that he didn't scare her when he saw her, and remembered the little girl she once was. He happily said her name. He accepted that she's not a kid anymore. Then he admitted that he wasn't really sure how to kick off their reunion. Robin chuckled after hearing his signature laugh. He raised her up while laughing some more to get a better look at her face. He mentioned how she looks just like her mother Olivia. The comment caught Robin off guard, but made her happy. She remembered her late mother's advice, that she mustn't give up on the future she'll live in, something that she would understand in time. Saul asked Robin if she heard Dr. Vegapunk's broadcast. Robin told him that since she was there at the time, she only heard so much, but she read about it in the papers afterwards. Saul recounted Vegapunk's declaration that history is written by the victors. Those words happened to be the legacy of Ohara. Their efforts were thought to have been buried, yet their voices have persisted. Saul referred to Vegapunk as a true scientist, one that refused to speak of right and wrong. Yet in the end, he gave his life to tell the world the truth. A leap of faith that was just like the scholars of Ohara. A sacrifice he's sure will shape the future. Robin touched Saul's scars and said that they've shaped his future as well. She asked him if it hurts. Saul laughed and told her that he's tougher than that. Back then, when Saul woke up, he was drowning in the ocean. The ice he was encased in was melted by the flames that consumed the island. Then he mentioned how much false reports about Robin pissed him off. She lowered her head while maintaining her smile. She beamed at him and said that they shouldn't focus on such dark subject matter. She outstretched her arms and asked if he was going to praise her for being alive. Saul laughed yet again. He brought her closer and shouted that he sure is. He praised her for taking on the whole world and staying alive for 22 long years. He thanked her for surviving. He was grateful for the ability to reunite with her. Robin smiled warmly in his embrace. She recalled her childhood loneliness, survivor's guilt, and desire to give up. Then she began to sob. They both broke down into tears. Robin told him how much she missed him, and Saul said the same. This moment right here could melt the coldest heart. With the exception of Luffy, Zoro, and Jinbei, all of the Straw Hats were overwhelmed by emotions and had to turn away. A sentiment I'm sure we can all relate to. Luffy just smiled at the sight. This chapter was a long time coming, and it did not disappoint. Be sure to let us know if you cried in the comments. As always, I am Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.